The A-Team set the 1980s on fire with explosive action, hearty laughs, and an unforgettable cast etched into the memories of millions. But behind the spotlight, many of the show's stars left us under tragic circumstances, from deadly illnesses to shocking, unforeseen accidents. Let's look back on the journeys of these legends and honor the legacies they left behind. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's go! Robert Vaughn as General Hunt Stockwell. Robert Vaughn, born on November 22, 1932, joined the A-Team in 1986 when he was 54 years old, playing the mysterious and commanding General Hunt Stockwell in the final season. At first glance, Vaughn exuded poise, intellect, and the seasoned aura of a spy, much like his legendary role as Napoleon Solo in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. But behind that sheen was a life of contradiction and inner conflict. Vaughn's biggest challenges didn't stem from his roles, but from his own perfectionist and unapologetically blunt personality. He was infamous for his rigid opinions, often demanding script rewrites, altering dialogue, and even controlling how scenes were shot, behavior that made directors and producers wary. He was labeled a set disruptor, and though his talent masked it for a while, the reputation slowly edged him out of major productions. The mounting backstage tension led to lost lead roles and forced him into secondary parts and lower-tier television work. His personal life carried its own sorrows. Though married with children, Vaughn rarely appeared in public with his family. His estranged relationship with one of his sons became tabloid fodder, as they hadn't been seen together for years. Vaughn never offered explanations, only silence. In his final years, Vaughn battled acute leukemia quietly. He continued working on the TV series Hustle until 2011, though his eyes appeared heavier and his voice more subdued. During this time, he lived in a quiet estate in Connecticut, surrounded by his cherished film memorabilia. Robert Vaughn passed away on November 11, 2016, just days before his 84th birthday. He left behind an estimated $10 million fortune, not just in property, cars, and assets, but in the enduring legacy of a life devoted to the screen. George Peppard as Colonel John Hannibal Smith. George Peppard, born on October 1, 1928 in Detroit, became an iconic face as Colonel John Hannibal Smith in the A-Team, the hit action series that premiered in 1983 when he was 55 years old. As the cigar-chomping charismatic leader known for the catchphrase, "I love it when a plan comes together," Peppard quickly won the hearts of audiences worldwide. But behind the fame was a life filled with turbulence. Born during the Great Depression, Peppard was the only surviving child after his mother suffered 5 miscarriages. His father died early, leaving the family in hardship, and Peppard had to give up school to work as a DJ, mechanic, and taxi driver. Acting became his lifeline, yet also drew him into a world of stress and isolation. His striking looks and perfectionist streak landed him many leading roles. But that same perfectionism turned into a hot temper and rigid attitude, costing him key opportunities, including the lead in Dynasty, which he lost due to clashes with producers. Peppard's personal life was equally fraught. He married 4 times, and nearly every divorce left deep emotional wounds and financial ones. His split with Elizabeth Ashley cost him custody of their child and thousands in monthly alimony, just as his career began to stall. Desperate to stay afloat, he took on TV roles he didn't enjoy, just to pay off divorce and support debts. He once bitterly admitted, "This is the first time I've had money in the bank after 4 divorces in California." For years, Peppard battled alcoholism, which worsened his reclusive and extreme behavior. He only broke free in 1978 after watching himself spiral through bad decisions. He later said he was ashamed of what he'd done while drinking and dedicated time to helping other addicts recover. In 1992, he was diagnosed with lung cancer, likely caused by his 3-pack-a-day smoking habit. Though he had part of his lung removed and quit smoking, his health never fully recovered. Even in his final days, he pushed himself to work filming a pilot episode for a new TV show in hopes of one last shot. But on May 8, 1994, George Peppard passed away from pneumonia, a complication of his cancer in Los Angeles, when he was just 65 years old. His estate was estimated at around $4 million, a modest sum for a life once touched by glory. Lance Legault as Colonel Roderick Decker. Lance Legault, born on May 2, 1935, brought the fierce persona of Colonel Roderick Decker to life in the A-Team from 1983 to 1986, when he was between 48 and 51 years old. With his thunderous voice, piercing glare, and strict military demeanor, he commanded every scene he was in. But behind there was a man with a fractured life. From childhood, life was cruel. His father died when he was just 6. His mother remarried under dire financial conditions, and Legault spent time in an orphanage. These harsh beginnings left him with a hardened soul. As an adult, he dropped out of college to pursue music, eventually finding a foothold in film and television. But his unstable temperament and penchant for gambling kept his career from staying steady despite appearances in major TV shows like Magnum P.I. Dynasty Knight Rider and Dallas. His personal life was no refuge. Though he had 4 children with his wife Teresa, their marriage teetered on the edge due to financial stress and Legault's unpredictable nature. He lost entire paychecks in a single night at the casino, forcing his family to sell off belongings to survive. His backstage arguments, refusal to cooperate, and arrogance behind the uniform made him a liability in Hollywood circles. In his final years, he lived quietly in a modest Los Angeles home with his beloved Harley Davidson and a collection of Old West memorabilia tokens of his glory days. Though he once had steady income from acting and voiceover work, his gambling addiction and erratic lifestyle left him with only about $500,000 at the time of his death. On September 10, 2012, Lance Legault died at home from heart failure at the age of 77, a slow, quiet end that contrasted sharply with the powerful presence he had once embodied on screen. Jack Ging as General Harlan Bull Fulbright. Jack Ging was born on November 30, 1931, and joined the A-Team in 1983 when he was 51 years old, playing General Harlan Bull Fulbright, a tough military figure who unexpectedly became an unwilling ally to the A-Team. With a stern appearance and calm demeanor, Ging portrayed a cold yet emotionally layered general, but behind the scenes was a life marked by silent pain. As a child, Ging experienced separation when his parents divorced, leaving him to drift between relatives and boarding schools. His early life had no anchor, only frequent moves and quiet meals. From college football to service in the Marine Corps and a decades-long acting career, Jack Ging seemed to always be searching for a place to belong. But the farther he went, the more isolated he became. After stepping away from Hollywood, he reportedly fell into prolonged depression described by friends as quiet, withdrawn, and barely communicative. Ging's marriages also suffered. He married 3 times, first right after high school, then to Gretchen Groening for nearly 2 decades, and finally to Sharon Ramona Thompson, who stayed with him until the end. Even in his longest marriage, he often lived apart, spending hours alone on the golf course or in his home library. His adult children became increasingly distant, with one rare comment from Ging stating, "Not everyone stays with you, not even your own kids." Though he appeared alongside Clint Eastwood in several films like Hang 'Em High and Play Misty for Me, Ging never reached leading man stardom. After 2000, he virtually vanished from the media, living quietly in La Quinta, California, in a modest home filled with memorabilia and a special room dedicated to football. Sadly, Jack Ging passed away on September 9, 2022, at the age of 90. At the time of his death, his estate was estimated at around $750,000, a small figure compared to the contributions he made. Morgan Woodward as Bus Carter and Captain Wetka. Morgan Woodward was born on September 16, 1925, and appeared in the A-Team in 1983 when he was 58 years old, playing guest roles like Bus Carter and Captain Wetka, stern, tight-lipped characters who always seemed to radiate threat from behind sunglasses or a steely stare. Much like his roles, Woodward in real life was reserved, strict, and difficult to approach. Raised in a traditional Texas household where his father was a doctor and discipline reigned, Woodward followed rules to the letter. After serving in World War II and the Korean War, He studied law but defied his family's expectations by turning to acting an act that deeply disappointed them. With a sharp face and commanding voice, he was quickly typecast as cowboys, officers, and tough military men. His deep immersion into such iron roles affected his real-life personality, rigid, controlling, and hard to please. On the set of Dallas, where he played Punk Anderson for 7 years, tensions often flared between Woodward and co-stars due to his domineering emotional control and unsolicited coaching. His relationship with Star Trek directors also frayed, even though he called his role as Simon Van Gelder the most exhausting performance of his life. That same personality bled into his private life. Multiple failed marriages, children who accused him of being cold, distant, and unwilling to listen. Friends drifted away, and family gatherings gradually no longer included him. In his final years, he lived alone in a Hollywood Hills home filled with film memorabilia and cowboy costumes. Despite being a familiar face for nearly 50 years, Woodward never hosted reunions or birthday parties, not even when he turned 90. His health deteriorated quickly. His memory faded, and he refused outside care, leaving only strict instructions in his will. On February 22, 2019, Morgan Woodward passed away at the age of 93. His estate was estimated at $1 million, mostly tied up in his Hollywood Hills home, and a valuable collection of Western props letters from famous directors and the infamous sunglasses from Cool Hand Luke. William Lucking as Colonel Francis Lynch. William Lucking was born on June 17, 1941, and became a familiar face in the first season of the A-Team in 1983, when he was 42 years old, playing Colonel Francis Lynch, a cold-blooded officer obsessed with capturing the A-Team at all costs. While his character represented order and discipline, Lucking's real life was filled with rebellion, instability, and controversy. A UCLA graduate and former theater art director, Lucking possessed deep intellect and strong artistic ideals, but those very traits often led to conflicts with Hollywood producers. He wasn't afraid to criticize directors, reject commercial filmmaking, or voice political opinions openly, something frowned upon in an industry still cautious about dissent. As a result, after the A-Team, he was quietly Though he kept working, he was frequently cast in supporting or villainous roles, or replaced at the last minute. Lucking's downward spiral wasn't just professional. His first marriage to Mary Carolyn Mimi Hawkins lasted 30 years, but was ravaged by infidelity rumors and constant arguments. Even after Mimi passed from cancer in 1995, his relationship with their 2 daughters remained strained, largely due to a long battle with alcoholism that made him volatile and unpredictable. At one point, close friends had to intervene when his drinking led to backstage outbursts and his firing from several TV productions. In later years, Lucking lived quietly in Las Vegas with his second wife, Sigrid Insel. On October 18, 2021, he died of a heart attack at age 80. His estate was estimated at around $2 million, partly from his home, but largely from stage script royalties and shares in the Santa Paula Theater Center. Dana Elcar as Judge Leonard Mordente and George Olson. Dana Elcar was born on October 10, 1927, and appeared in the A-Team in 1984 when he was 57 years old, playing guest roles like George Olson and Judge Leonard Mordente. However, he's best remembered as Pete Thornton, the stern, loyal, and compassionate supervisor in MacGyver for nearly a decade. But behind the lights was a man burdened with pain, loneliness, and a literal descent into darkness at the end of his life. From a young age, Elcar pursued acting with burning passion, studying under Sanford Meisner, one of America's most respected drama coaches. But in his personal life, failure seemed constant. 2 marriages ended in collapse amid accusations of infidelity and emotional absence. Though he had 4 children, he rarely spoke of them in interviews. Friends recalled him as hot-tempered, emotionally unstable, and prone to pushing away even his closest allies. In 1991, tragedy struck when he was diagnosed with glaucoma, leading to total blindness. Instead of quitting, Elcar brought his illness into his character. Pete Thornton on MacGyver also became blind, grappling with the darkness. That performance marked the deepest emotional point of both actor and role. But after MacGyver ended, Elcar was nearly exiled from the industry. His blindness led him to reject interviews, skip events, and sever ties with past collaborators. Though he appeared in a few blind roles on ER and Law and Order, he couldn't hide his bitterness at no longer being part of the game. Still, Elcar didn't entirely give up. He returned to the stage, his original home, to play Vladimir in Waiting for Godot, a role for the blind complete with a real white cane. It was his final attempt to prove he was still an actor even without sight. Yet even that late recognition couldn't ease his inner loneliness. His final companion, Thelma Garcia, stood by him as he lived quietly in a modest Ventura, California home. On June 6, 2005, Dana Elcar passed away at age 77 from pneumonia complications, a common fate for elderly individuals battling illness and isolation. His estate was valued at approximately $2 million, mostly from MacGyver royalties and a Ventura property. Edward Winter as Johnny Royce and Mitchell Barnes. Edward Winter was born on June 3, 1937, and entered the A-Team universe at the age of 46, portraying guest roles like Johnny Royce and Mitchell Barnes, characters full of schemes and tension, reflecting aspects of Winter's own complex personality. He left a mark with his sharp, intense performances that carried an air of emotional volatility. But offstage, his life was no less tense than the characters he played. Talent and passion weren't enough to save him from himself. Winter was notorious for being difficult, hot-tempered, and even rude to co-stars and directors. TV producers revealed that several major roles slipped through his fingers because of unpredictable outbursts. As a result, his career declined after 1985, relegated mostly to supporting roles, voice acting, or forgettable parts. His private life was equally chaotic. Several marriages ended quietly, and in his final years, he had reportedly lost contact with his children. Rumors of heavy alcoholism followed him, further damaging his relationships and isolating him from the acting community. Longtime friends faded away, and only a few former colleagues dared to speak of him with sorrowful words like, "a brilliant actor but a deeply troubled man." His greatest challenge came when he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. His acting roles declined, his voice grew shaky, and he all but vanished from screens after 1995. Though he still received royalties from TV work, his net worth near the end of his life was estimated at under $1 million, most of it tied to an aging home in Woodland Hills, California. Edward Winter died on March 8, 2001 at the age of 63 due to complications from Parkinson's. His ashes were scattered over the Pacific Ocean quietly and without fanfare, much like the way Hollywood gradually cast him aside. Red West as Lieutenant Trask and Red Avery. Red West, born Robert Gene West on March 8, 1936 in Memphis, Tennessee, appeared in the A-Team in 1983 when he was 47 years old, taking on two supporting roles, Lieutenant Trask and Red Avery, gritty military types that perfectly suited Red's real-life image as a former Marine boxer, loyal bodyguard, and one-time best friend of the King of Rock, Elvis Presley. But behind the spotlight was a decades-long tragedy. Once considered Elvis's right-hand man, Red West, became vilified after co-authoring Elvis What Happened in 1977, just 2 weeks before Presley's death. The book exposed Elvis's drug addiction, isolation, and dark private life, something Red claimed was meant to save my friend. But the public didn't forgive him. He was labeled a traitor, and the entertainment industry quietly turned its back. From there, his once steady acting career began to falter. It wasn't just his career. His health and spirit also suffered. As a veteran stuntman, Red fractured his skull during a failed action scene in the Wild Wild West, which led to long-term treatment and chronic pain. Rumors of mood swings and alcohol abuse further alienated him. Though he maintained a long marriage with wife Pat Boyd and had 2 children, Red privately carried deep guilt over the book that may have cost him his closest friendship. On July 18, 2017, Red West died at the age of 81 from an aortic aneurysm at Baptist Memorial Hospital in Memphis, the very city where his life both began and ended. His funeral was held with honor at Memorial Park Cemetery, just 2 months after the death of his close cousin Sonny West. At the time of his passing, his estate was valued at approximately $1 million, mostly from his Memphis home, and a collection of vintage cars. Alan Fudge as Elliot Farnell and Frank Gaines. Alan Fudge was born on February 27, 1944 in Wichita, Kansas. When he joined the A-Team in 1983 at the age of 39, he played Elliot Farnell and Frank Gaines, supporting characters who brought emotional nuance, sharp intellect, and occasional suspicion to the show's tense storylines. Though never a breakout star, Fudge was widely respected for his subtle performances, leaving a lasting impression on TV audiences. Behind the scenes, he battled with personal demons that slowly unraveled both his career and his private life. Known for his fiery temper and uncompromising standards, Fudge had a history of on-set clashes with directors and producers. These tensions eventually led to a kind of quiet blacklisting within the industry, a period during which his opportunities grew fewer, and his name was quietly passed over in casting conversations. The toll on his personal life was just as heavy. His marriage came to an amid whispered accusations of alcoholism and emotional instability. Friends and former colleagues noted a growing distance in his demeanor during this time. A man who had once been admired for his emotional sensitivity as an actor now seemed to be shutting down, withdrawing from the world that once celebrated him. Despite these challenges, Alan Fudge never stopped working entirely. He continued to find work in supporting roles on television, appearing in shows like Seventh Heaven Matlock and Columbo. Yet the energy that once made him stand out had dimmed, and the spotlight no longer followed him with the same intensity. In his final years, he lived a quiet life in Los Angeles, residing in a modest home, his last significant possession. His net worth was estimated at around $600,000, drawn mostly from old television royalties and residuals from his early-stage performances. He died on October 10, 2011, at the age of 67 after battling both lung and liver cancer. His departure was as quiet as the roles that once defined his presence, a humble exit from a life lived in the shadows of Hollywood. The stars of the A-Team left behind a legacy etched deeply in the hearts of fans, even as their personal lives were marked by tragedy and hardship. Which legendary character from the team was your favorite? Share your memories in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe to relive the timeless magic of television's golden era.